I canceled my son's hard-earned school trip, told him to get over it, then punished both him and his sister when he dared to be upset. Now my entire family has turned against me and I don't know how to fix the damage. I should have known something was wrong when my husband asked to speak with me in the garage last Tuesday evening. Marcus never asks to speak with me. He talks, we discuss, we bicker over whose turn it is to pick up the dry cleaning. Formal requests to converse in private spaces were not part of our 17-year marriage vocabulary. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead as he closed the door behind us, and the smell of motor oil and old cardboard hung in the air. His face held an expression I'd never seen before, something between exhaustion and resolve. "I've been thinking about this for a long time," he said. "And I need you to really hear what I'm about to tell you." Those words marked the beginning of the worst 2 weeks of my life. Looking back, I deserved every single moment of what came next. My name is Catherine, I'm 44 years old, and until recently, I believed myself to be a good mother. I was wrong about that in ways I'm still uncovering. This is the story of how I destroyed my relationship with my 14-year-old son, damaged my bond with my 16-year-old daughter, and nearly lost my marriage, all because I couldn't admit I was wrong until it was almost too late. Writing this has taken me 3 days. I've started and stopped a dozen times, deleting paragraphs that made me look too sympathetic, forcing myself to include details I'd rather forget. My therapist suggested this exercise as part of my ongoing work, a way to process everything that happened and hold myself accountable publicly. At first, I resisted. Who wants to broadcast their worst moments to strangers on the internet? But then I thought about all the parents who might be making the same mistakes I made, who might be blind to the damage they're causing, who might need to see the consequences laid bare. So here it is. The ugly truth, with nothing softened or excused. Let me back up 3 months to when this really started. My son Ethan is a quiet kid. He's not the type to demand attention or throw tantrums. When he was small, other mothers would comment on how easy he was, and I took that as a compliment to my parenting rather than recognizing it for what it was, a child who had learned early that his needs would come second. His older sister Mia inherited my assertiveness, my tendency to advocate loudly for herself. Ethan inherited his father's stoicism, his habit of retreating inward when things got difficult. In October, Ethan's school announced a spring break trip to Washington, D.C. for the 8th grade history class. The cost was $1,800 per student, covering transportation, hotel, meals, and entrance fees to various monuments and museums. I remember the evening he brought home the permission slip, his eyes bright with a hope I rarely saw in him. "Mom, can I go? Please." $1,800 was not insignificant for our family. We're comfortable. Marcus works as an electrical engineer, and I'm a marketing coordinator for a mid-sized firm, but we're not wealthy. Vacations require planning. Large purchases require discussion. "That's a lot of money, Ethan." I watched his face fall, that familiar resignation settling into his features. He nodded, already accepting the rejection. "What if I earned it myself?" The words came out quietly, almost like he was afraid to suggest it. I'll admit, part of me assumed he'd give up after a week or two. 14-year-old boys aren't known for their follow-through, or so I told myself. I agreed to the arrangement thinking it would be a valuable lesson about the real world, about how things don't just get handed to you. What I didn't anticipate was my son's determination. Ethan created a spreadsheet, an actual spreadsheet with formulas and projections, tracking his earnings against the deadline. He mowed lawns throughout our neighborhood, raking leaves as autumn settled in, then shoveling driveways once winter arrived. Our neighbor Mr. Harriman hired him to clean out his gutters. Mrs. Chen paid him to organize her garage. The elderly couple 3 doors down, the Andersons, had him help with grocery shopping and light housework twice a week. My son woke up at 5:30 on Saturday mornings to walk dogs before their owners left for weekend shifts. He babysat for families in our church congregation. When snow blanketed our street in January, he was outside before sunrise, shovel in hand, going door to door. I remember one particularly brutal morning in late January. The temperature had dropped to 12 degrees overnight, and a fresh 6 inches of snow covered everything. I was making coffee around 7 when I glanced out the kitchen window and saw Ethan 3 houses down, working on the Petersons' driveway. His breath plumed white in the frozen air, and even from that distance, I could see the strain in his movements as he heaved shovel after shovel of heavy, wet snow. Part of me thought I should call him inside, make him warm up, protect him from overexertion. But another part, the part I'm ashamed of now, felt a small satisfaction that he was learning what hard work really meant. He came home around 11 that morning with $30 in his pocket and fingers so cold they turned white at the tips. I told him to run them under lukewarm water, not hot, and he nodded without complaint. That evening, I saw him updating his spreadsheet, adding the day's earnings to his running total. The determination on his face should have moved me more than it did. I watched all of this from a comfortable distance, occasionally impressed but never fully engaged. The permission slip sat on the refrigerator with a magnet, the deadline creeping closer while I paid less attention than I should have. In early February, Ethan came to me with a shoebox. Inside was a collection of crumpled bills and loose change that he'd carefully counted and recounted. "I have $1,642, he said. "I'm going to make the rest before the deadline. Mr. Harriman said he needs help painting his fence when it warms up, and the Andersons want me too." "That's wonderful, honey." I cut him off because I was in the middle of reviewing a presentation for work. "We'll talk about it later." Later never came. Or rather, it came in the worst possible form. 2 weeks before the payment deadline, my sister Valerie called me in tears. Her husband had left her, emptied their joint account, and disappeared to Florida with a woman he'd met online. Valerie, who had been a stay-at-home mom for 15 years, was suddenly facing single parenthood with twin 9-year-old boys and no income. The call came at work, during my lunch break. I sat in my car in the parking garage listening to my sister sob, feeling the walls of my comfortable life shrink around me. Valerie had always been the cautious one, the sister who followed all the rules, who married her college sweetheart and built what looked like a perfect suburban existence. To hear her voice break, to hear the terror underneath the tears, it shook something loose in me. "I don't know what I'm going to do," she kept saying. "The mortgage is due in 3 weeks. The boys need new shoes for school. Derek took everything, Catherine. Everything." The family rallied. My parents, both on fixed retirement incomes, couldn't contribute much financially but offered to help with childcare. My brother sent what he could from Oregon, cleaning out his own emergency fund to wire her $2,000. Phone calls flew between us daily, coordinating support, dividing responsibilities, trying to build a safety net for Valerie and her boys. And I looked at our savings account and made a decision without consulting Marcus. I told myself I was being decisive. I told myself that emergencies required action, not endless discussion. I told myself that Marcus would understand, that he'd make the same choice if he were in my position. I took the money we'd set aside for me as summer volleyball camp and sent it to Valerie. Then, rationalizing that one sacrifice warranted another, I decided that Ethan's trip would also have to be cancelled. In my mind, the logic was clean: family emergency trumped recreational activities. The kids would be disappointed, sure, but they were young. They'd bounce back. There would be other camps, other trips. Valerie's situation was urgent, was real in a way that summer plans weren't. What I failed to consider, what I willfully ignored, was that Ethan's trip wasn't a gift I was withdrawing. It was his money. Money he had earned through his own labor, his own time, his own frozen fingers and aching muscles. By sending it to Valerie without his consent, I wasn't making a sacrifice. I was making him make a sacrifice, one he hadn't agreed to. The afternoon I told him, he was sitting at the kitchen table doing homework. I remember the way the light came through the window, catching the dust motes floating in the air. I remember thinking this would be quick, that he'd understand, that family comes first. "Ethan, I need to talk to you about the DC trip." He looked up, and I saw hope flicker in his eyes. The deadline was approaching. Perhaps he thought I was going to congratulate him on reaching his goal. "Aunt Valerie is going through a really hard time right now. Uncle Derek left, and she needs financial help from the family. I've decided to reallocate some of our resources to support her and your cousins." I watched confusion cloud his face. "What does that mean for my trip?" "It means the trip is cancelled. I'm sorry, but family has to come first." The silence that followed was unlike anything I'd experienced with my son. He didn't cry. He didn't yell. He sat perfectly still, processing. "But I earned the money myself." "I understand that, and I'm proud of you for working so hard. But the thing is, sweetie, that money could make a real difference for Aunt Valerie right now. You're young. There will be other trips." "I earned it myself." His voice cracked on the last word. "You said if I earned it, I could go." "Things change, Ethan. That's part of life. I need you to be mature about this." He stood up so abruptly that his chair scraped against the floor. "You're taking my money? The money I worked for since October?" "I'm not taking it. I'm redirecting it to where it's needed most. You'll understand when you're older. I want to talk to Dad. Your father and I make these decisions together." This was a lie. I hadn't discussed any of it with Marcus. He agrees with me. The look Ethan gave me then, I still see it when I close my eyes. It wasn't anger, not really. It was something closer to the expression of someone who has finally seen the truth of a situation they've been trying to ignore. He left the kitchen without another word, and I heard his bedroom door close with a soft click that somehow felt worse than a slam. That night, I stood outside his door for 10 minutes, listening. I don't know what I expected to hear, crying, maybe, or the sounds of him destroying something in frustration. Instead, there was nothing. Complete silence. Somehow that was worse than any outburst would have been. I knocked softly. Ethan? Can we talk more about this? No answer. I know you're disappointed, honey. But sometimes adults have to make hard choices, and sometimes those choices affect. I heard you. His voice through the door was flat, stripped of emotion. You already said everything you needed to say. I stood there for another minute, hand raised to knock again, before finally retreating to my own bedroom. Marcus was working late, or so I thought at the time. Later I learned he'd been at a bar with a college friend, something he almost never did, and I wondered if he'd already sensed that something was wrong in our house. I told myself he'd get over it. I told myself I was teaching him valuable lessons about sacrifice and family loyalty. I told myself a lot of things that helped me sleep at night. 3 days later, I discovered that Ethan had sent an email to his history teacher, Mr. Patterson, explaining that he would not be attending the trip due to family financial circumstances. Mr. Patterson, apparently, had forwarded this email to the school counselor, who had then reached out to Marcus at his work email to check in. Marcus came home that evening looking confused. Catherine, what's going on with Ethan's school trip? I got an email from some counselor asking if everything was okay at home. I felt a flash of irritation. I handled it. We're helping Valerie right now, and something had to give. You canceled his trip? The one he's been working toward for months? I made a decision about family priorities. Without talking to me? You would have agreed. It's the right thing to do. Marcus stared at me for a long moment. Where's the money he earned? The $1,600? I sent it to Valerie along with our contribution. I will never forget the way my husband's face changed in that moment. Something shifted behind his eyes, some understanding settling into place. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't gesture dramatically or pace the kitchen. He just stood very still, and when he spoke, his words were measured and cold. You sent his money to Valerie? Money that a 14-year-old boy earned through months of manual labor. Money that was his. He's a child. He doesn't have independent finances. He does, actually. Legally, the money he earned belongs to him. More importantly, Marcus stopped himself, jaw tight. We'll discuss this later. What's that supposed to mean? He didn't answer. Instead, he walked past me to Ethan's room and knocked softly. I followed, hovering in the hallway, straining to hear what was said. The voices were too low, too muffled. All I caught were fragments, Marcus saying I'm sorry and didn't know and shouldn't have happened. Then silence, long stretches of it, punctuated by more murmured words I couldn't make out. When Marcus emerged 20 minutes later, his eyes were red. What did he say? I asked. Nothing. He said nothing. He just sat there and nodded. Marcus's voice was hollow. Do you understand what you've done? I made a difficult decision for the good of the family. You broke a promise to your son. You took something he earned and gave it away without his consent. And you lied about having my agreement. It wasn't a lie, it was. Stop. He held up his hand. Just stop. I can't talk to you right now. Marcus slept on the couch that night. I convinced myself he was being dramatic, that he'd see reason in the morning. Instead, the cold silence between us stretched through the following week. He went to work early and came home late. He answered my questions with single words. At dinner, he spoke only to the children, asking about their days, their classes, their plans, treating me as if I were furniture. Ethan, for his part, became a ghost in our house. He attended school, came home, did his homework, ate dinner in silence, and disappeared into his room. When I tried to engage him in conversation, he responded with monosyllables. When I asked about his day, he said fine. When I attempted to explain my reasoning again, he simply looked at me with those empty eyes and waited for me to finish speaking. Mia noticed. Of course she did. Mom, what did you do to Ethan? I made a difficult parenting decision that he doesn't agree with. He'll come around. He won't even look at you. He barely talks to any of us anymore. He's being dramatic. Teenagers are like that. Mia's expression hardened. He's not being dramatic. He's hurt. There's a difference. You don't understand the full situation. Then explain it to me. So I did. I told Mia about Valerie's crisis, about the need for family to support each other, about how Ethan's trip was a luxury we couldn't justify when relatives were struggling. My daughter listened to the whole explanation, then asked the single question that cracked something open in my chest. How much did you take from my volleyball camp fund? That's different. How much, Mom? All of it. But volleyball camp is different than a school trip. There will be other summers. Mia laughed, but there was no humor in it. So you canceled both our things? Ethan's trip that he worked for all year and my camp. And you're surprised that we're upset? I expected more maturity from both of you. Maybe you should have expected more from yourself. Mia walked away, and I felt the first real stirring of doubt. Was I the villain here? No, I decided. I was the parent. Hard decisions fell to me. They would understand someday. The breaking point came 6 days after I canceled Ethan's trip, on a Saturday morning that started like any other. I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard Ethan's door open. He came downstairs dressed in work clothes, the old jeans and flannel shirt he wore for yard jobs. Where are you going? Mr. Harriman needs help. I didn't say you could leave the house. Ethan paused at the door. I have a commitment. You've been rude and sullen all week. Until your attitude improves, you're grounded. Something shifted in my son's face. The blankness cracked, and beneath it I saw a flash of genuine anger, the first real emotion he'd shown since I delivered my news. Rude and sullen, he repeated slowly. You took $1,600 that I earned. You canceled a trip I worked for since October. You gave away my money without asking me. And you expect me to be cheerful about it? I expect you to respect my decisions. Why? You don't respect me. That's enough. You're grounded for a week. No phone, no leaving the house, no visitors. Mom, 2 weeks. Want to keep going? Ethan stared at me for a long moment. Then he walked to the coat rack, retrieved his jacket, and headed for the door. If you walk out that door, there will be consequences. He walked out. The rage that filled me was disproportionate, and some distant part of my brain knew it even then. But I couldn't stop myself. I marched upstairs to Ethan's room and began searching for his phone, which I knew he'd left behind in a drawer because I'd confiscated his charger the day before. While looking, I came across a spiral notebook tucked under his mattress. I shouldn't have read it. I know that now, and I knew it then. But I was angry and looking for justification, for proof that my son was the unreasonable one in this conflict. What I found instead was a journal. Entries dating back 2 years, written in Ethan's careful handwriting. Pages and pages of thoughts he'd never shared with me. The first entry was dated to his 12th birthday. I remembered that day. We'd had a party, cake, the usual. But according to Ethan's account, I'd spent most of the party on my phone coordinating details for Mia's upcoming dance competition. Mom forgot to order the flavor of cake I actually wanted, he'd written. She ordered vanilla because that's Mia's favorite. I didn't say anything because she was busy. I turned the pages, my stomach sinking with each entry. October 15th, Mom agreed to let me go to DC if I earn the money myself. This is the first time I felt excited about something in a long time. I'm going to make a plan. November 8th, made $127 this week. Mr. Harriman says I'm a good worker. I don't think Mom believes I'll actually do it, but I will. December 22nd, $847 saved. Halfway there. My arms hurt from shoveling, but it's worth it. Maybe if I show Mom I can do this, she'll start taking me seriously. January 14th, Dad asked if I wanted to throw a football around yesterday. I said yes, but then Mom needed him to drive Mia to practice, so we never got to. I get it. Mia has actual commitments. I'm just here. January 30th, I heard Mom and Dad arguing last night. Dad said Mom needs to stop treating me like I'm invisible. She said I'm the easy one, so I don't need as much attention as Mia. Is that really what she thinks? That I don't need anything because I don't demand it? February 12th, $1,642. I'm so close. Mr. Patterson said the trip is going to be amazing. We're visiting the Lincoln Memorial at night and the Smithsonian and in the Capitol building. I've never been anywhere like that. I've never been anywhere, really. Just here. The entries after I canceled the trip were sparse. Just a few lines that cut deeper than anything else. February 28th, she took it. All of it? Said I'd understand when I'm older. I think I understand right now. I understand that what I want doesn't matter. It never has. March 2nd, I don't know what I did wrong. I did everything she asked. I earned the money. I kept my grades up. I didn't complain about anything. And it still wasn't enough. I'm never going to be enough. March 4th, maybe she's right. Maybe I should just get over it. Maybe I'm too sensitive. Maybe wanting things for myself is selfish. I don't know anymore. March 5th, I counted today. In the past year, Mom has been to 3 of my soccer games and 11 of Mia's volleyball matches. I'm not mad at Mia. It's not her fault. I just wish someone would see me. I closed the journal with shaking hands. Reading it should have been a wake-up call. Instead, my mind performed the mental gymnastics necessary to avoid accountability. He was being melodramatic. Teenagers always thought their problems were world-ending. He'd thank me someday for teaching him that life isn't fair. When Mia came downstairs an hour later, she found me in the kitchen stressed cleaning the counters. "Where's Ethan?" "He left despite being grounded. When he comes back, we're going to have a serious conversation about respect." Mia's eyes dropped to the counter, where I'd set the journal while I cleaned. "Is that Ethan's?" "It was under his mattress." "You read his journal?" "I'm his mother." "You read his private journal." A parent has the right to know what's going on in her child's life. Mia's face cycled through several emotions: shock, anger, disgust, and finally something that looked disturbingly like pity. "Mom, what is wrong with you?" "Excuse me? Do you even hear yourself? You took his money. You canceled his trip. You grounded him for being hurt about it. And now you've violated his privacy by reading his journal. What's next? Are you going to punish him for having feelings? I don't appreciate your tone. I don't appreciate you treating Ethan like he's disposable. He's your son. He worked so hard for that trip. Everyone in the neighborhood knows how hard he worked. Mrs. Chen told me she's never seen a kid so dedicated. And you just took it from him like it was nothing. I had to make a difficult choice. Did you though? Did you really have to take his money? He's 14. He doesn't have a job, he doesn't have income, all he had was what he earned from 4 months of getting up early and working until his hands cracked from the cold. And you sent it to Aunt Valerie without even asking him. Valerie is family. So is Ethan. So am I. But you didn't ask either of us. You just decided that our things weren't important and gave them away. You're grounded too." The words left my mouth before I could stop them. Mia stared at me in disbelief. "For what?" "For disrespecting me. I'm telling you the truth. Grounded. 2 weeks. Same as Ethan." Mia's laugh was bitter and disbelieving. "Fine. Ground me. Take my phone, take my stuff, take whatever you want. That's what you do, right? Just take things from your kids whenever you feel like it." She stormed upstairs, and I heard her door slam. A few seconds later, I heard Ethan's door slam too. He must have snuck back in through the side entrance while I was arguing with Mia, hoping to avoid another confrontation. Now both my children were locked in their rooms, furious with me, and I stood alone in the kitchen feeling like the walls were closing in. When Marcus came home from his Saturday golf game, he found me sitting in the dark living room, the journal still clutched in my hands. "Catherine? What's going on?" I told him everything. The confrontation with Ethan, the journal, Mia's outburst, the groundings. By the time I finished, Marcus was sitting in the armchair across from me, his face carved from stone. "You read Ethan's private journal." I needed to understand why he was behaving this way. "He was behaving that way because you broke a promise and took his money. That's not complicated enough for you? There's more to it. He's so withdrawn lately, and I thought, you thought that violating his privacy would help? That reading his most personal thoughts would somehow fix what you broke? I'm his mother. Then act like it." Marcus stood up and walked toward the stairs. "Where are you going?" "To talk to our children. To try to repair some of the damage you've done today." "I'll come with you." "No." The word was flat and final. "You've done enough." I sat in the living room for hours, listening to the muffled sounds of conversation from upstairs. At one point, I heard something I hadn't heard in weeks: Ethan's laugh. A small one, quiet and brief, but real. It was followed by Mia's voice, then Marcus's. They were up there together, a family of 3, and I was down here alone. Around 9 o'clock, my phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "We need to talk. Valerie called me." My stomach dropped. I called her back immediately. Mom, what's going on? Valerie told me you sent her money from Ethan's trip fund. The money he earned himself. I was trying to help the family. By stealing from your child? It's not stealing. He's 14. Catherine Marie. My mother's voice carried decades of maternal authority. That boy worked for 4 months. Your father and I watched him shoveling driveways in the freezing cold. We saw him raking leaves in the rain. He earned every cent of that money through honest labor, and you took it without permission and gave it away. Valerie needed help, yes. Your father and I helped. Daniel helped. You and Marcus helped. But that help should have come from adult resources, not from a child's savings. I made a judgment call. You made the wrong one. And from what Valerie tells me, you're now punishing Ethan for being upset about it. I felt tears pricking my eyes. Everyone is making me into a monster. I was trying to do the right thing. The road to family destruction is paved with good intentions, sweetheart. What matters now is whether you can admit you were wrong. I don't know if I was wrong. A long pause. Then I don't know how to help you. My mother hung up, and I sat in the dark for another hour, trying to process how everything had spiraled so completely out of control. Update number 1, 2 weeks later. The intervention came on a Tuesday evening, exactly 2 weeks after my conversation with Marcus in the garage. I didn't know it was coming. No one warned me. When I came home from work, I found my parents' car in the driveway, alongside my brother Daniel's rental. Inside, my entire family was gathered in the living room: Marcus, Ethan, Mia, my parents, and Daniel, who had apparently flown in from Oregon without telling me. What's going on? I asked, setting my purse down slowly. Is someone hurt? Sit down, Catherine. My father's voice was gentle but firm. He's a retired high school principal who spent 30 years managing difficult conversations, and that experience was evident now. I sat. We're here because we love you, my mother began. And because we're worried about what's happening in this family. This is about the trip. I already explained. This isn't just about the trip. Marcus spoke now, and his voice was tired. This is about a pattern. A pattern that's been going on for years, one that I've ignored for too long because I didn't want to create conflict. My heart was pounding. What pattern? Daniel leaned forward. Do you remember when Ethan was 8 and he won that art competition at school? The one where his painting was going to be displayed at the community center? I tried to recall. Vaguely. The ceremony was on the same day as Mia's dance recital. You made Ethan skip his ceremony so the whole family could be at Mia's performance. I remember because I called to congratulate him, and he started crying on the phone. I don't remember that. I do. Ethan's voice was quiet, almost inaudible. Mrs. Thornton, the art teacher, she gave me the certificate in an empty classroom. I was the only kid who didn't have family there. The words hit me like a physical blow. I looked at my son, really looked at him, and saw the truth of it in his eyes. He remembered every detail. When Ethan was 11, my mother continued, he asked if he could take guitar lessons. You said it was too expensive and the schedule was too complicated. 6 months later, you enrolled Mia in a private tennis clinic that cost twice as much. She had real talent, Ethan had talent too. But you never saw it because you weren't looking. My father cleared his throat. Catherine, do you know how many of Ethan's soccer games you've attended in the past 3 years? I've been busy with work. 3. You've been to 3 games. Mia had a volleyball tournament the same day, or you had a deadline, or you weren't feeling well. There was always a reason. The room fell silent. I looked around at the faces of my family, my husband, my children, my parents, my brother, and saw the same expression on all of them. Concern. Love. But also certainty. They had come with evidence, with specific memories, because they knew I would try to argue. I don't play favorites, I whispered. I love both my children equally. I know you believe that. Marcus stood and retrieved something from the side table. A sheet of paper covered in handwriting. This is a list. Things that Daniel and your parents helped me compile. Every time Ethan was overlooked in favor of Mia. Every promise that was broken. Every event that was missed. He handed me the paper. There were over 40 items. 40 moments, spanning years, where I had chosen Mia over Ethan without even realizing I was making a choice. My hands trembled as I scanned the list. Some items I remembered clearly, others were foggy, half buried under the accumulated sediment of busy years. Item 7, Ethan's first science fair project, forgot to pick up display board, project incomplete. Item 15, promised to take Ethan to the planetarium for his 11th birthday, cancelled for Mia's regional tournament. Item 22, Ethan asked for help with algebra homework, told him to figure it out himself because Mia needed help with English essay. The items went on, a catalogue of small betrayals that collectively painted a picture I didn't want to see. I wasn't conscious of. That's the problem, Mom. Mia spoke now, and her voice was thick with emotion. You didn't even notice. Ethan noticed. I noticed. Everyone noticed except you. Even I noticed, Daniel added quietly. And I lived 2,000 miles away. Every time I visited, I could see it. Ethan fading into the background while you orbited around Mia. My mother reached over and took my hand. We're not saying this to hurt you, Catherine. We're saying it because we love you, and we love your children, and we can't watch this continue. I looked at my son. Ethan, please don't apologize yet. His voice was remarkably steady for a 14-year-old. Because I don't think you understand what you're apologizing for. I understand that I hurt you. That I took your money and cancelled your trip. That's what happened. But do you understand why it hurt so much? I opened my mouth, then closed it. I didn't have an answer. The trip was the first thing you ever let me work for on my own. The first time you trusted me to do something hard. For 4 months, I thought if I could just prove myself, if I could show you I could do it, maybe you'd see me. Really see me. And then you took it away like it was nothing. Like I was nothing. Tears were streaming down my face now. That's not, I never meant. I know you didn't mean it. That almost makes it worse. The room was silent. Outside, a dog barked somewhere in the neighborhood. Normal sounds of normal life continuing while my world fractured and reformed. What do you want me to do? I asked finally. How do I fix this? It was my father who answered. You start by acknowledging that there's something to fix. No more rationalizing. No more explanations that put the blame on everyone else. You made choices that hurt your son. Own them. I own them. That's a start. Daniel handed me a business card. This is a family therapist. She specializes in dynamics like this, patterns of favoritism that parents don't even realize they're perpetuating. I've already paid for the first 10 sessions. Daniel, you don't have to. Let me do this. Let us help you. I looked at the card. Dr. Rebecca Euleren, licensed family therapist. The address was local, just 20 minutes away. Okay, I said quietly. I'll go. We'll all go, Marcus added. This is a family problem. We fix it as a family. Ethan hadn't said anything for several minutes. I turned to him, uncertain what to say. I know I can't undo what I did. I know an apology doesn't give you back those 4 months of work with a trip you were so excited about. But I am sorry. More sorry than I've ever been about anything in my life. My son studied my face for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. That's a start, he said, echoing my father. We didn't hug. We weren't there yet. But for the first time in weeks, he looked at me with something other than blank resignation. There was hurt there, a deep wound that wouldn't heal quickly. But there was also the faintest glimmer of hope. The intervention ended with pizza and awkward conversation. My parents stayed for a few hours, and Daniel showed us pictures of his new house in Portland. It felt forced and strange, like wearing clothes that didn't quite fit. But it was something. A foundation to build on. That night, after everyone had gone home or gone to bed, I sat at the kitchen table with a list Marcus had given me. I read every item, forcing myself to remember each moment, to feel the weight of what I'd done. Item 23, forgot Ethan's birthday breakfast tradition, remembered Mia's. Item 31, took Mia to see her favorite band, told Ethan his museum trip was too expensive. Item 38, made Ethan give his larger bedroom to Mia when she complained about closet space. Item 44, took Ethan's summer job earnings for family vacation extras without asking, let Mia keep her babysitting money. 44 instances of choosing one child over another. 44 small cuts that had accumulated into a wound too deep to ignore. I didn't sleep that night. By morning, I had made 3 decisions. First, I would attend every therapy session with complete honesty, even when it was painful. Second, I would repay Ethan every cent I had taken, from my own savings, regardless of how long it took. Third, I would rebuild my relationship with my son one small moment at a time, proving through actions rather than words that I could change. The next morning, I told Marcus about my decisions. He listened, nodded, and squeezed my hand. "It's going to be hard," he said. "He's not going to trust you right away. He might never fully trust you again." "I know. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about Ethan's journal, about the boy who wondered if he'd ever be enough. About the months of early mornings and hard labor, the hope he'd invested in earning something for himself, the devastation when I'd taken it away. "I have to be," I said. "He deserves a mother who shows up for him. Even if it's too late to undo the damage, it's not too late to stop making it worse." Marcus kissed my forehead. "That's the first thing you've said in weeks that sounds like the woman I married." Update number 2, 6 months later. Dr. Eulerin has a way of cutting through defenses that I find both uncomfortable and necessary. In our third session, she asked me a question I couldn't answer: "Why do you think Mia's needs feel more urgent to you than Ethan's?" I stammered something about Mia being more vocal, more demanding, squeakier will and all that. "So the lesson you've taught Ethan," Dr. Eulerin said gently, "is that being quiet and undemanding means being overlooked. The very qualities you praise in him, his patience, his self-sufficiency, are the same qualities you've punished him for." The silence that followed lasted a full minute. I sat with the weight of her words, feeling them settle into my bones. "I didn't punish him for being easygoing," I finally said, though even as I spoke, I knew I was wrong. "What would you call it, then?" He learned early that advocating for himself didn't work, so he stopped trying. He became the easy one not because that's who he naturally is, but because that's the role you created for him. That session broke something open in me. I went home and, for the first time, really asked Ethan to tell me about himself. Not his grades or his chores or his schedule, but him. What he liked. What he thought about. What he dreamed of doing someday. We sat on the back porch, the late afternoon light slanting through the trees, and I asked questions I should have asked years ago. At first, he gave me the same surface answers he always gave: school was fine, soccer was fine, everything was fine. But I waited. I didn't fill the silence with chatter or redirect to safer topics. I just sat with him and waited. He was hesitant at first. Why wouldn't he be? I hadn't asked these questions in years, maybe ever. But slowly, over the following weeks, he began to talk. Ethan wants to be an architect. He's fascinated by buildings, by the way spaces shape how people live and interact. His room, which I'd barely entered in years, was covered in sketches of buildings he designed. Some were practical, others were fantastical. All of them were beautiful in ways I hadn't known my son was capable of creating. I stood in his doorway one afternoon, looking at the drawings pinned to his walls, and felt the full magnitude of what I'd missed. My son had an entire inner world, dreams, talents, passions, that I'd never bothered to explore. "Why didn't you tell me about this?" I asked one evening, looking at a detailed drawing of a public library he'd imagined. "You never asked," he said simply. "And I didn't think you'd care." Those words were a knife, but I let them cut. I deserved them. I repaid his money in full, $100 at a time from a separate account I set up specifically for this purpose. Each payment came with a note acknowledging what it represented. Not just money, but broken trust. Not just an apology, but a promise to do better. The school trip, of course, was long gone. But I made a decision. I researched architecture programs for high school students, found a 2-week summer intensive at a state university, and showed the information to Ethan. "Would you want to do this? I'll pay for all of it. No strings attached, no conditions, no takebacks." He studied the brochure for a long time. "What if you change your mind? What if something comes up with Aunt Valerie or, then I'll figure out another way. I will never again take something from you that you've worked for or that I've promised you." That's not a suggestion. That's a rule I've made for myself. It took him a week to decide. When he finally said yes, I cried. The weeks leading up to the program were filled with preparation. Ethan researched the professors who would be teaching, studied the portfolios of previous students, and assembled his own collection of work to bring. I watched him prepare, really watched, noticing details I'd overlooked before: the way he bit his lower lip when concentrating, the slight tilt of his head when evaluating a drawing, the quiet pride in his eyes when something turned out the way he'd envisioned. One evening, I found him at the kitchen table with a set of drafting pencils I didn't know he owned. "Where did those come from?" I asked. "Mr. Harriman gave them to me. They belonged to his son, back when he was studying engineering. He said I should have them." Ethan looked up at me, something unreadable in his expression. "Mr. Harriman talks to me a lot." About my drawings, about what I want to do. He's the one who first suggested architecture. The words landed harder than they should have. A neighbor had noticed my son's potential when I hadn't. A neighbor had encouraged him, guided him, given him tools and validation that should have come from me. "I'm glad you have Mr. Harriman," I said carefully. "And I'm sorry I wasn't the one who saw it first." Ethan nodded slowly. "Me too." The intensive was last month. 2 weeks at the university, living in a dorm, studying with real architects, designing projects with other kids who shared his passion. Marcus drove him there and I drove him home, and when he got in the car, he talked for 3 straight hours about everything he'd learned and done and seen. He told me about the professor who specialized in sustainable design, about the field trip to a famous architect's studio, about the project he'd completed with 3 other students designing a community garden space. His words tumbled over each other, faster and more animated than I'd heard him speak in years. When we pulled into the driveway, he paused before getting out. "Mom, can I tell you something?" "Anything." "I'm still hurt. I don't know if that's ever going to completely go away. What you did, taking my money, reading my journal, grounding me for being upset, that stuff stays with you, you know." "I know. But I also see that you're trying. And that matters. It matters a lot." He didn't say he forgave me. Maybe he never fully will. But he gave me something almost as valuable: acknowledgement. Acknowledgement that effort counts, that change is possible, that I hadn't destroyed everything beyond repair. Mia has been a different kind of challenge. Where Ethan pulled away quietly, Mia has been vocal about her frustrations. She's challenged me in therapy sessions, called me out when I've slipped into old patterns, refused to let me off the hook with easy apologies. "You can't just say sorry and expect everything to be fine," she told me last month. "Sorry is a starting point, not an end point." She's right. 16 years old and already wiser than I was at 44. I've reinstated her volleyball camp fund, of course. But more than that, I've tried to change how I show up for both my children. Equal time at games and events. Equal interest in their lives. Equal weight given to their needs and wants. It's harder than it sounds. Favoritism, I've learned, isn't usually a conscious choice. It's a pattern of small decisions, tiny moments of attention given or withheld, that accumulate over time. Breaking that pattern requires constant vigilance, constant course correction. Some days I still fail. I slip back into old habits, give Mia more attention, overlook something important to Ethan. The difference now is that I catch myself. Or Marcus catches me. Or the kids call me out. Dr. Eulerin has helped me understand why the patterns existed in the first place. Part of it, she believes, stems from my own childhood. My mother was sick for much of my teenage years, and I learned to associate love with visible need. Mia's demands, her emotional expressiveness, triggered something familiar in me. Ethan's quietness didn't register as requiring attention because he didn't seem to need anything. Learning this didn't excuse my behavior, but it helped me recognize the triggers. When Mia comes to me with a problem, I now consciously pause and ask myself, when did I last check in with Ethan about his day? When he retreats to his room, I don't assume that everything's fine. I knock, I ask, I sit with him even when he insists nothing's wrong. Last week, I almost scheduled a dentist appointment during one of Ethan's soccer games. It was innocent, I didn't even realize the conflict until I looked at the calendar. But I caught it. I rescheduled the dentist, went to the game, cheered from the stands as my son scored his first goal of the season. The moment the ball hit the net, Ethan looked toward the sidelines. His eyes scanned the crowd, and when they found me, standing, clapping, yelling his name, his face split into a grin so wide it made my chest ache. How many moments like this had I missed? How many times had he looked for me and found an empty space? Afterward, he found me in the parking lot. "You came," he said, sounding genuinely surprised. I said I would. "Yeah, but you've said that before." "I know. And I broke those promises. But I'm trying to be someone who keeps them now." He nodded slowly. Then, for the first time in nearly 7 months, he hugged me. It was brief and a little awkward, but it was real. I felt his arms around my shoulders, his chin against the top of my head. When had he gotten so tall? And I held on as long as he'd let me. Marcus and I are in a better place too. The garage conversation that started this whole intervention led to months of honest discussion about our marriage, our parenting, our patterns. He admitted that he'd enabled my favoritism by not calling it out sooner. I admitted that I'd taken his steady support for granted. "I should have pushed harder," he told me one night. "I saw what was happening to Ethan, but I kept hoping you'd notice on your own." I didn't want to be the bad guy, didn't want to start fights. So I stayed quiet. Why did you finally speak up? Because our son came to me that night and asked if there was something wrong with him. If he'd done something to make you love him less. That broke me, Catherine. That broke something fundamental in me, and I knew I couldn't stay quiet anymore. We're rebuilding. All of us, together. Valerie, for what it's worth, tried to return the money when she found out where it had come from. I told her to keep it. What was done, and taking it back wouldn't unbreak what I'd broken. She's doing better now. Found a job, got a good lawyer, is managing as a single mom. I'm glad I could help her, I just wish I'd done it without hurting my son. The thing about mistakes is that you can't unmake them. The trip to DC is gone forever. Those 4 months of Ethan's labor are gone. The journal entries documenting his hurt, the weeks of silence, the belief that he wasn't enough, those wounds will scar even as they heal. But here's what I've learned: healing is possible even when perfection isn't. You can't go back and be the parent you should have been. You can only go forward and try to be the parent your child still needs. Ethan is 15 now. He's taller than me, his voice has deepened, and he's starting to think about high school and beyond. Sometimes I look at him and mourn the years I wasted, the moments I could have had if I'd been paying attention. But mostly, I look at him and feel grateful. Grateful that he's still willing to try. Grateful that our family chose intervention over implosion. Grateful for second chances, even when they're not deserved. Last night, Ethan showed me his latest architectural design. A community center for a fictional town, complete with a library, an art gallery, and a rooftop garden. Every detail was considered, every space intentional. There's a room here, he said, pointing to a corner of the first floor, that I designed for families. Somewhere parents and kids can come and just be together. No pressure, no expectations. Just space to connect. I studied the drawing, taking in the large windows, the comfortable seating arrangements, the way natural light would flood the space. My son had created something beautiful, not just aesthetically, but emotionally. He designed a room for healing. Why this room? I asked. Ethan was quiet for a moment. I've been thinking a lot about space. How the places wherein affect how we feel, how we relate to each other. Dr. Eulerin talks about creating emotional space for people. I wanted to try designing physical space that does the same thing. I looked at my son, at the boy I'd overlooked for so long, and saw the man he was becoming. Someone thoughtful and creative, capable of imagining places where people could heal together. Someone who had taken his pain and transformed it into something generative, something hopeful. It's beautiful, I told him. You're going to build amazing things someday. He smiled, a real smile, the kind I used to see before everything went wrong. Thanks, Mom. The drawing now hangs in our kitchen, next to the refrigerator where his permission slip once sat. Every morning when I make coffee, I look at it and remember. Remember what I almost lost. Remember why I'm fighting to be better. We're not done healing. We may never be completely done. But we're on the path, and we're walking it together. And right now, that's enough. A final thought. To anyone reading this who recognizes themselves in my mistakes, it's not too late. The patterns we fall into, the blind spots we develop, the ways we inadvertently hurt the people we love most, these things can be changed. Not easily, not quickly, but genuinely. The first step is the hardest, admitting that the problem exists, that you are the source, that good intentions don't excuse harmful impact. After that, healing becomes possible. Not guaranteed, but possible. And in that possibility lies everything worth fighting for.